Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. We've had a really interesting challenge come in from one of our listeners, and they want to understand how the bitter lesson in AI actually works.
Hmm.
And lucky for us, we've got a ton of research to dive into today.
Yeah.
We've got articles, research papers, even one study that looked at 20 years of research from the Computer Vision and Pattern Recognition Conference.
Oh, wow.
So we're
It
going to
got
be
me.
getting into some really fascinating stuff.
Yeah, The Bitter Lesson was written by Richard Sutton. It's become a really influential idea in AI research.
Okay.
Basically, it says that if you focus on really heavy computation and letting AI just learn from loads of data,
Mm-hmm.
even if it seems a little less elegant at first, it ends up beating approaches that try to program computers to think like we do.
So it's kind of like we're teaching computers to learn like kids do through
Exactly.
experience instead of just pre-programming them with all the answers.
Yeah.
But why on earth would that be the winning strategy?
Well, think about it like this. Human brains are amazing. We do some pretty incredible things. But we are limited by, our biology.
Hmm.
Computers can keep getting bigger, faster, more powerful,
Hmm.
and they can analyze just huge mountains of information that we would never be able to process on our own.
So it's kind of like we're just using the brute force power of computers to
Yeah,
allow them to learn insights that we might miss because of our limitations.
exactly. It's really about letting the data itself guide the learning process rather than relying on our own limited understanding of what intelligence actually is
Yeah.
and how it works.
It's pretty wild to think about. We're basically admitting that we don't have all the answers and we're letting AI kind of figure things out on its own.
Yeah, it's pretty humbling in a way.
Totally. Okay, well, let's dive into how this bitter lesson thing actually works.
Sure.
So we've got this study that we mentioned that looked at 20 years of research from the Computer Vision and Pattern Recognition Conference,
Yeah.
which, is like the major conference for computer vision researchers.
Oh, yeah, it's a big deal.
Big deal, yeah. So
They had a lot of researchers working on that.
absolutely. And what's really interesting is that they actually used AI, specifically LLMs or large language models,
Oh, wow.
to analyze the trends in these research papers.
Oh, that's really interesting.
So it's kind of like AI helping us understand how AI is evolving, which is just,
It's very meta.
it's totally meta.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, it's like AI looking in the mirror.
totally. They basically had these LLMs read thousands of papers and score them based on how well they aligned with different aspects of the bitter lesson.
Okay, so they were looking for things like how much each paper emphasized learning from data,
Yeah,
how well their ideas could be scaled up with more computing power.
exactly.
Okay, and did they look at how much the papers focused on solving general problems rather than very specific ones?
Exactly. They were looking at all of those different dimensions of the bitter lesson.
That's really cool. So they essentially had the AI read all these research papers and figure out which ones were actually following the principles of the bitter lesson.
Yeah, and the results were actually pretty surprising. The study found a really strong correlation between papers that embraced the bitter lesson and their impact on the field.
Oh, wow.
So papers that really emphasized learning from data and scaling with computation ended up being cited way more often by other researchers.
That makes a lot of sense. So it's not just some kind of theoretical idea. The bitter lesson is actually playing out in how AI research is being done.
Absolutely.
People are seeing these results firsthand.
Right. So it's not just this pie in the sky idea.
Yeah,
It's something that is really being borne out in the real world of AI research.
exactly. And we're starting to see the results of this thinking in some pretty incredible applications of AI, too.
Like what? Give me some examples of the bitter lesson in action.
Well, one of the most famous examples has got to be AlphaGo,
Oh, yeah.
the AI that beat the world champion at Go, which is a super complex game.
Oh, I remember that. That was a huge deal. Everyone thought that it would be impossible for AI to beat a human Go master.
Yeah, initially, a lot of experts in the field thought that the only way to build an AI that could play Go at that level would be to somehow program in all of the intuition and strategic thinking of a human Go master.
Right, right.
But AlphaGo took a completely different approach.
So instead of trying to like
Yeah.
pre-program it with strategies,
Yeah, they didn't give it a bunch of rules.
wasn't it Monte Carlo tree search?
Yes. It used a technique called Monte Carlo tree search. It essentially played millions and millions of games against itself.
Oh, wow.
To learn how to play,
So it's basically simulating countless games in its mind
right.
and learning from the outcomes.
Exactly. And because computers can process information so much faster than we can,
Right.
it very quickly surpassed even the best human Go players.
So AlphaGo wasn't taught to play Go in any traditional sense.
Yeah.
It just learned by playing at a scale no human could ever match.
Yeah.
That is a perfect example of the bitter lesson in action.
It's a perfect example. It shows us that letting AI explore and learn from data, even if it seems like kind of a brute force method,
Right.
can lead to these breakthroughs that we could never have achieved on our own with our limited human understanding.
Yeah.
And this approach isn't just limited to games. We're starting to see it in all sorts of areas like natural language processing and image recognition.
Okay, so we got this theory of the bitter lesson, and we've got these really compelling examples of it in action. What does it mean for AI systems that are more general purpose? AI that's not just playing Go, but can do lots of different things.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's one of the things that has researchers really excited right now. Developing these general purpose AI systems is a huge focus in the field, and the bitter lesson is playing a key role in how we think about that.
Okay, so how is the bitter lesson shaping the development of these AI systems that can do lots of different things that are more flexible?
Well, one of the biggest ideas to come out of the bitter lesson is the idea that generality is really important.
Okay.
Instead of designing systems that are super good at just one specific task, we should be trying to build systems that can learn and adapt to a whole bunch of different challenges.
So instead of building a separate AI for Go, another one for translation, another one for writing code, it's like we're trying to build one that can do it all.
That's the big dream. And we're seeing some really impressive progress in that direction.
Really? Like what are some examples of these more general purpose AI systems?
One example that comes to mind is OpenAI's O1 models. These are super smart systems that can do all sorts of things, write all kinds of creative text formats, translate languages, answer your questions in a really informative way, even write code.
Wow, it sounds like these O1 models are like super powered virtual assistants.
Yeah, they're really amazing. And the key to how they work is that they're built and trained in a way that really fits with the bitter lesson.
I'm really curious. Tell me more about how these O1 models embody the principles of the bitter lesson.
Well, first of all, they're built on absolutely enormous data sets, and they're trained using just incredible amounts of computing power. But they can also adapt how much computing power they're using based on whatever task they're trying to do.
Oh, wow. So if it's like a simple problem, they might just use a little bit of their power, but if it's something super complex, they can ramp things up to meet the challenge.
Exactly. And this flexibility is so important because it means these AI systems aren't just powerful, they're also efficient, which is something that comes directly from the bitter lesson.
Hmm.
It's about letting the AI determine the best way to use its resources based on what it sees in the data and what it's being asked to do, rather than us trying to tell it what to do.
So it's not just about, mindlessly throwing more data and computing power at a problem.
Right.
It's about designing the systems so they're smart enough to use those resources effectively.
Exactly. And that's one of the things that makes this whole approach so exciting. We're not just building bigger, faster AI. We're building AI that's more adaptable, more efficient, and ultimately more intelligent.
It's amazing to see this bitter lesson play out in these cutting-edge AIs like AlphaGo and these one models that we've been talking about. But,
Yeah.
it kind of makes me wonder,
Mhm.
if AI is learning and adapting, does that mean it's becoming more like human intelligence?
That is a fantastic question, and it gets right to the heart of what the bitter lesson is really all about.
Okay.
It kind of suggests that instead of getting hung up on trying to perfectly copy how we as humans think, we should really focus on letting computers learn in their own way.
Yeah, but isn't the whole point of AI to make machines that think like humans? Isn't that kind of the ultimate goal?
It might seem that way at first, but the bitter lesson really challenges that assumption.
Yeah.
It suggests that the most effective AI that we end up building might not think like us at all. It might actually arrive at solutions and insights through processes that are completely alien to the way that we understand things.
So instead of creating AI in our own image, we should be open to the idea that it might actually develop its own unique kind of intelligence.
Exactly. And it's both exciting and a little bit unnerving, right? It means kind of letting go of some of our preconceived ideas about what intelligence is and how it should work.
It's like venturing out into this unknown territory
Yeah.
where the rules are still being written.
I love that. That is a fantastic way to put it.
Yeah.
The bitter lesson is kind of like our compass guiding us through this new territory. It's telling us, trust the data, trust the algorithms, and just be ready for the unexpected.
Okay, so we're learning to let go of our human-centric biases, to embrace this potential for AI to kind of forge its own path.
Yeah.
But what does that look like in practice? What does it actually mean to let AI learn in its own way?
Well, it really means sticking to those core principles that we talked about from the bitter lesson. Scaling computation, letting AI learn from massive, massive amounts of data.
Okay, so we've talked about that already, but how do those principles actually translate into building AI systems that can learn and adapt on their own?
Well, one of the most important techniques that really aligns with the bitter lesson is something called reinforcement learning.
Okay, I've heard of that, but can you break that down a little? What exactly is reinforcement learning?
Sure. Imagine you're trying to teach a dog a new trick, right?
Okay.
You give the dog a treat when it does something right,
Mhm.
and you might scold it or withhold the treat if it does something wrong.
Right.
And over time, that dog learns to associate its actions with those rewards or punishments.
Right.
And it figures out how to do more of the things that get it treats.
Got it. So it's like learning through trial and error, but how does that apply to AI?
It's actually very similar with AI. In reinforcement learning, we create a kind of virtual environment for the AI to interact with, and we define what are the good things, what are the bad things, what are the rewards and punishments in that world. And then we just kind of set the AI loose in that environment and let it learn through trial and error.
So instead of programming in very specific instructions, we're more like giving it a goal
Yeah.
and then letting it figure out how to get there.
You got it. And that's where the bitter lesson comes in. We don't try to tell the AI exactly how to achieve that goal. We just give it a ton of data, a ton of computing power, and let it learn through its own experiences and experiments.
And is that how we get AI systems that can do things we never even thought were possible?
That's exactly how it works. Reinforcement learning, combined with the principles of the bitter lesson, has led to those incredible breakthroughs that we've been talking about.
Right.
Like AlphaGo, for example.
Right.
AlphaGo learned to play Go at that superhuman level simply by playing tons and tons of games against itself, making mistakes, and learning from those mistakes.
So it's almost like we're creating this kind of virtual playground for AI, where it can experiment, make mistakes, learn, and evolve in ways that we might not ever fully understand.
I love that analogy. That's a fantastic way to think about it.
Yeah.
And the more we allow AI to explore in that playground, the more likely we are to be surprised by what it can do.
So the bitter lesson isn't just this theoretical idea.
No.
It's like a guide, a practical guide to building these more powerful, adaptable AI systems.
Absolutely. It's changed how we think about AI.
Yeah.
It's a complete shift. And it's a shift that's already having a huge impact.
It really seems like the bitter lesson is all about embracing the unknown and trusting the process, letting AI kind of chart its own course.
Yeah.
But where does that leave us humans in all of this? Are we just becoming spectators, while machines kind of take over?
That's a question I hear a lot.
Yeah.
And it's definitely a valid concern. But I think it's important to remember that AI, at its core, is still a tool. It's a super powerful tool, but a tool nonetheless. And how we choose to use that tool is really up to us.
So it's not like we're just passively handing over control to AI.
Right.
We still have a responsibility to guide its development and how it impacts the world.
Absolutely. In fact, I'd even argue that the bitter lesson actually underlines how important human ingenuity is in AI development.
Okay, now that's interesting because I thought the bitter lesson was all about letting AI figure things out on its own.
Yeah, to a certain extent it is, but it's not about completely removing humans from the equation.
Right.
It's more about shifting our focus.
Okay.
Instead of trying to micromanage every single detail of how AI works, we should be focusing on setting up the best conditions for it to learn and grow on its own.
So kind of like we're setting the stage, but letting AI take the lead role in the play.
That's a great way to think about it.
Yeah.
We are like the architects of the AI revolution,
Okay.
designing those learning environments, setting the goals, providing the data.
Right.
But we're not trying to dictate every single step along the way.
Right.
We're giving AI the freedom to experiment, explore, learn in its own way.
So we're like the coaches, and AI is the team on the field, figuring out the plays.
I like that. Just like a great coach. We need to figure out how to motivate and inspire our AI team to achieve amazing things. And part of that is about building the right kind of learning environment that encourages creativity and that drive to explore new possibilities.
That makes me think about that research on computer vision and pattern recognition we talked about earlier.
Hmm.
You mentioned that one part of the bitter lesson, that search over heuristics dimension, hadn't really taken off the same way as some of the other aspects. Why do you think that is?
It's a really interesting point, and I think it highlights how the bitter lesson itself is still evolving. This idea of using intelligent search algorithms to guide how AI learns is still pretty new.
Hmm.
And it's an area where human ingenuity is absolutely essential.
So even though the bitter lesson emphasizes letting AI learn from data,
Hmm.
we still need those brilliant researchers out there designing the algorithms that make that learning possible.
Exactly. We need to constantly push the boundaries of what's possible, coming up with new algorithms, new ways of structuring AI, new training approaches.
Hmm.
And all of that requires human creativity, insight, and a deep understanding of how AI works at a fundamental level.
It's like this really amazing dance between human ingenuity and the raw power of AI.
Yeah,
We're learning from each other, pushing each other to new heights.
exactly. And that's what makes this whole field so exciting and dynamic. It's this constant process of discovery, exploration, and working together.
Mhm.
And the bitter lesson is like this guiding principle, reminding us to stay humble, to embrace what we don't know, and to
Mhm.
trust that AI can find its own unique path to learning.
So, looking ahead, what does all this mean for the future of AI? What can we expect to see as the bitter lesson keeps shaping the field?
I think we're going to see AI systems that are even more powerful than what we have now. Yeah.
More adaptable, more woven into the fabric of our lives.
Hmm.
AI is going to be taking on more and more complex tasks, solving problems that we never even thought were solvable, even starting to enhance and augment our own human capabilities.
It's both incredibly exciting and a little bit intimidating to think about, It feels like we're standing at the edge of this really transformative moment where the line between human intelligence and machine intelligence starts to blur.
It's definitely a time of huge change and incredible opportunity.
Yeah.
And as we navigate this new world, the bitter lesson is going to be such a valuable guide. It reminds us to embrace the power of data,
Mm.
the potential that AI has, and how important it is for us to use our own human ingenuity to shape the future that we want to see.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah, we have.
We've gone from the theory behind the bitter lesson to its real world impact and what it could mean for the future of AI.
Yeah, it's been a great deep dive.
It really has. And I think what we've learned today is that the bitter lesson isn't just some abstract idea.
It's really a powerful way to understand how AI works and how we can harness its potential to solve some of the biggest challenges that we face as humans.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks for being here with us today, exploring all of this.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity and given you a new way of thinking about the incredible world of AI.
And remember, the bitter lesson isn't just about AI.
Hmm.
It's about all of us. It's about our ability to embrace the unknown, to question what we think we know, and to trust in the power of learning and adapting.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lesson that applies not just to the machines we build, but to us as well.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep.